Today is March the 26th, 2009, and I'm Linda Heller, and this is Mr. Louis Kuebel, and I'll be interviewing him tonight. The videographers are Jean Guthrie and Barney Klein. Well, good evening, and how are you this evening?
Doing wonderful.
Good. Are you a little excited about being here with us today?
Oh, yeah. This makes the hackle stand up on my back.
I can see it does. I can see it does. You lived out in the country?
We lived up the river. You know where the pink house is?
Yeah.
That was my uncle's house, Fritz Kuebel. And we lived back one ranch down this way.
Okay.
On the same side of the...
Well, tell me about the house and everything.
Our house?
Yeah, because I've got some of the wood in my house from that
I know
house.
you have, yeah. Yeah.
So
it was a wonderful home to us, and my dad went to, when he built the house, he went to Kansas City in a wagon and got the lumber there from the railroad, you know, and hauled it down there. He had a German fellow that really built the house, but I mean he had help with my family and so forth, but I think his name was Schupp. But he was real German. But I didn't even know him. That was before my time. Okay. You know, that was this house right here when they got it done. It was a pretty house. You want me to hold it up here?
What was that right there?
That was a bedroom right there. And that round thing sticking out was the windows. That's where we used to have the Christmas tree. And then there was a bedroom in there, and a little farther down there. You can't see it, but there's a chimney coming out over there, and we had a wood heater in there. We didn't have a fireplace. Okay. But then in the kitchen down there, we had just a regular stove and oven and all that, you know.
Was it wood burning too?
Oh, yeah. You had to get that Spanish oak from across the river over there, and that's what people used in those old wood stoves. It had to be Spanish oak, you know.
Why Spanish oak?
Well, it made a real good fast fire, and it was... it just worked good with the oven and all, you know, how they were made.
Did it get pretty hot?
Oh, yeah, yeah. And it was a real good old stove. That's what we had. And I guess we were living on top of the world to have all that stuff. You know.
How many rooms were in there, and how many people lived in the house?
Well, there was my dad and my mother. At that time, my grandfather lived with us, and he lived over here in the room on the side out here. And he died, I think, when he was 91 or so there. And he's buried up there in our cemetery. You know. But anyway, and then later on they built 2 more rooms on the back of the house. Because see, my brothers and sisters, they were much older than me. My oldest brother, Douglas, who was a sheriff, he was 19 years older than me. And they were already gone away when I was growing up.
So you were a later child?
Yeah, I was the last one. That's why I'm the only one living yet.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, that's very nice. I'm glad to know where that lumber came from in my house now.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
Well, growing up, did you have a lot of animals and things like that? Or?
Yeah, my dad had a lot of sheep and goats and cattle. That's what we... At that time, we had the land on both sides of the river. He had like 1,000 acres there. But 250 acres of it was farm, and that was back in the days when you plowed it with a double disc and 3 mules, you know.
How did that work?
Well, I know that one field above the house, you know, it's a pretty large field, 50 some odd acres. It took me, when I was a kid, it took me a month to plow that with a double disc, you know. But those fields had been worked up for many years to get them to that shape, you know, because you always make sure you have to take the rocks out of there and haul them out and so forth and get the stumps out. Or that you may get thrown off of that plow when they go over it, you know. So it was a lot of fun, but it was...
Was it hard on the body, though?
Well, I was young and it didn't bother me at all. And I had a horse to ride, and my dad had several horses to ride, and we mainly got around the place on the horses, you know.
Well, did you ride a horse to school, or did you go to school?
Well, when I first went to school, I didn't have a horse, and I was walking. And from that school where you all were up there that day, and it was 3 miles down to the house, and then I walked a while, and there was a good aunt and uncle that lived over at Albert over there. They had lost their son when he was little, and so he gave me a horse to ride. That was Henry Wilkie's, my aunt and uncle.
Okay.
They live over at Albert. Did live over at Albert. They're long gone. But anyway, he gave me a horse, so I had a horse to ride to school. There was other children who came in on the horses, some on donkeys, and some just walked, because a lot of people didn't have a horse to ride.
Did you just go to school and then come back, or did you have some time?
Well, at that time, we just went to school, and then we ate our lunch at noon, and then in the afternoon we had a little recess, and for maybe 15 minutes, down to go to the bathroom or what have you. And I had a wonderful teacher there named Ms. Pepper, and she was just really a fine lady, and I went to her most of my young life there until the last year I went there. We had a new lady. That was when the war began, about that time, and she was a real young lady, and I only went to her that 1 year, and then she moved me up 2 grades, and so I came to Blanco in 1941 to go to school here. That's when they built the high school, started on it, or had it going.
Okay.
And then I went through that 1 year, and I wasn't real happy with things. That's when the war started, and all my friends in school there, most of them are joining the service. And one boy named Harley Smith sitting next to me, he had joined the Merchant Marines. Now, I was just 14, but you could join when you were 14.
You could.
Yeah. And I wanted to do that, but my folks didn't see it that way, and they wouldn't sign the papers for me, you know. So, and because all the other boys were going in the service, and so I left home and roamed around the country for months and months until that fall, and came back home, and by that time I was in my up to past in 15, and I went down and talked to the people in San Antonio, and they would let me go in the Coast Guard when I was 16, but I wasn't quite there yet, but they let me go in a couple of months earlier because it was in the middle of the war.
Okay.
And then I went to radio school up in New Jersey, and then went overseas down in South Pacific.
Okay.
And it was...
You were barely 16 years old then?
Well, I was 16 when I was going to school and all. My birthday's on the 25th of January, but they let me go in the last of the other year so that I could go through boot camp and go to school and get out of that. And then I was going okay, because I went in when I was 15, but then I got out when I was still 17. You know. So, but we made the tour down through the islands.
Well, I got a question. You were barely 14 when you left home. What did you do? Where did you go?
I went out in California, and I worked a while in California, and I liked it pretty well out there. And that's when the war was going on, and these planes were flying over. We called them Black Widows, with 2 engines and twin tails, you know, and we didn't even know what it was all about, but they were making them and flying them out there. And then I headed back up around Chicago, and I worked for the Ringling Brothers for a good while. And that took a lot of my time. And then I finally gave that up and went over. I was going to go up and see what New York looked like, but I was hitchhiking on the road there, and a man picked me up on the road and wanted to know if I wanted to work, and I said, I sure do. I said I was off the farm, and he said, well, I got a job, you can go to work. And he said, we got a lot of cows, milk cows, and we raised chickens. And so that was a Baptist preacher. And I stayed there with them a good while and worked there in Ohio until I decided that my folks would sign the papers for me when I got to be 16. So then I went home and joined the Coast Guard.
Okay.
I learned Morse code, and it takes a while to pick it up, but the younger you are, the easier it is to learn. the guys that were in there with me, a lot of them were from Texas, and like I say, the younger, the easier they could learn the code. And when we were down in the islands, nearly every one of the radio men that I knew on the different islands down in the South Pacific was from Texas. So we kind of knew each other, you know.
It's interesting.
Yeah. My main station was on Morotai. I don't know if you ever heard of Morotai, but it's, and we had, most of the soldiers there were all Australian. We were the only Americans on the, we had a base there, like they drop you off in the jungle and you set up a radio tower. That's when we had the Loran stations. And you had like 30 people that run it. Everybody had their job, you know. We had a number of Loran stations all around in those islands. That's where the planes and the ships find their directions, you know. And in those days, you didn't have TV or anything, but that was the start of TV. You had the scope there, and I was in a Radio Shack, but I could go in there and with the what they call scopies, guys that sat there and watched those, like watching a TV. You had to keep it in sync all the time, those curves, so that whoever's picking it up out there, off of a plane or ship, you got to have four islands, and you get all that across at one place, and then they know where they're at, you know. It's the way you. That's a big land down there in the South Pacific with all the islands, and we were on different islands. And,
but you were quite an adventurer.
well, I don't know. We went where we had to go. So, and but at night time you could hear those Japanese on their radios too. You remember Tokyo Rose? You could pick her up on the radio. You know. It was different than now. We lived in a kind of a different time. And,
well, it's kind of living like out in the country
yeah,
in those days,
same
right?
like, it's
Very
fine
simple.
for country people that you can get along fine, you know what I mean? But on this main island that we had there, that Morotai, it's 80 miles long and about 40 miles wide. But where our station was, it was pretty well hid. It was up on a bluff, and water was straight down there, but it was like 300 feet deep. We had 2 landing craft that we had of our own, where we could do things if we needed something. We could go down and try to find something on the other end of the island where the Australians were. You know.
So when did you get out of the service?
I got out in it was in 46.
1946.
Yeah, I went in at 44 and got out in 46. That's when I went in and went to started the boot camp up in Curtis Bay, Maryland. That's right near Washington, D.C.
Right.
Right there on.
I kind of know where that is. I've been up that way.
Have you? Okay.
Kind of know where it is.
Well, all I know about it, when we went up there, when we left home here, San Antonio, and when we got to St. Louis, well, we got into the snow, and then we never got out of the snow. We went up to Curtis Bay, and there was snow knee-deep on the ground, and that's where we did our boot camp and training, and it was knee-deep snow all the time we were there.
When you got into all that ice and snow, were you wishing you were out again?
It didn't. We were so busy, you didn't worry about it. You know what I mean? And we had to learn a lot of things there in boot camp, how to guard your camps and all this and that. You did a lot of different things and learn how to work on a ship, and then we, I don't know, we did what we had to do, but you never had any time to waste. You got up at 4 o'clock in the morning and you swabbed down the building and pushed all the bumps over to the side and with a mop and water, and then you went, it took about an hour of exercise, hard exercise, and then you ate breakfast. And then you come back and you went out and started working on the ship or whatever, learning how to do everything. Yeah. You got to like it, but I mean, it's something to do, and you're always busy. You don't have to worry about other things. You know, you're occupied all the time. Then I went from there. They sent me to Atlantic City. That was long before they had what they got there now, but that's where we went to school there, and we lived in a hotel. that's where we learned the Morse code.
Mm-hmm.
And that's when we got through there. A lot of the guys fell out of it on the way because if they were older, like maybe 20 or so, they couldn't learn the code like the younger ones of us. You know.
I got a question. Do you still know that Morse code?
Well, you don't forget it that way. They drill it into your head once you learn it. And when you can take 40 words a minute, well, then you're ready to go out on a job, you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
But that's day and night training.
Mm-hmm.
You never quit while they were training you. And actually, when you were out there on the job, and you had to, in those days, you had to copy everything as in 4-letter words. And it was all in code, and you had code books that you would have to figure out what you were doing there after you had it all down, all those 4-letter words. And when you got that figured out, then you'd take it over to the old man. We only had one officer there, a lieutenant. The rest of us were all enlisted men. And show him what was coming in, and most of the time he was standing right there by you and looking over your shoulder as you were copying it. But you didn't really know what you were copying until you got the code book out and read it and translated it.
Yeah. So you got back in 1946.
Yeah.
And what did you do from there?
Well, I lived here up on the ranch and worked there on the ranch some, and then we came to town here sometime and went to Little Blanco to dances and all this.
You did go to dances, huh?
Oh yeah, that was long ago. And
how often did they have a dance?
Probably once a month, maybe. I think.
Pretty much like now.
I guess. I mean, there was other places we went to because my brother Douglas, the one that was sheriff, he lived in Fredericksburg at that time. Sometimes I stayed up there with him.
Okay.
And then I got one night. I don't know where I was coming from. I think it was maybe from Little Blanco, and I was pretty well lit, and I had a wreck on the way home.
You drank?
Well, I was old enough to drink, not really, but I mean, anyway.
That's all right.
And I didn't make one of the curves going back up there, right there where that White House is on this side of our home, you know, that old Weber home.
Yeah.
And I didn't make that curve. That's right there where Arvin's house is now.
That's a pretty sharp curve.
Yeah, and broke my leg, so I was down here in the hospital for.
Now down here in the hospital meant it's
right here in town, this old building.
The old courthouse.
Yeah,
okay.
And Dr. Keeley was living over in Johnson City, and he worked on my leg, and Dr. Flannery was here too, and but they couldn't get it back together, you know what I mean? And so they drilled a hole in my heel and put a brace on there up to my stump here and try to stretch it, you know. They tried that for about a month each day, tightening it up, but they never could get it to come back like that. So they finally just decided to cut it open and all the way from my knee up to here, and then they just did it like that, you know. And then it worked.
And they operated right here.
Right down there
in the
town.
Courthouse.
Yeah.
The courthouse.
There was a friend of mine over here. She was one of the Page girls from up on the river there. We went to school together when I was one to. Anyway, she lives over here at Albert now, and we came by there to visit her a while back. She married one of the Maniuses. Anyway, she said when they cut my leg open there, that the blood just squirted up and some of it got on her and she fainted.
That's funny.
I guess it wasn't funny to her. But
no, it just sounds funny now, doesn't it?
Oh man. But after that then my bone began to grow back together, and then pretty soon they put me on crutches, and I went around here on crutches for a long time, but pretty soon I could walk again. I was sure glad to be able to walk again because we used to roam those hills up here, you know, where the house is there, and you need to be able to walk to do that. And
there's quite a ledge up there too.
oh yeah.
On that river.
Yeah, there's a lot of, well, we had a wonderful place there. We had part of the land on the south side and part of it on the north side, you know. And we hunted, fished, and trapped, and all kinds of things like that. It was a real nice place. And then finally, after my dad died, well, my brothers they each had given us each 100 acres. And you know that big hill is? That was the start of it. When my brother was sheriff, he got that, and then my other brother Reuben. I don't know if you knew him.
I know of him.
Okay, and then he got the next 100, and then my sister, one of my sisters got the next 100, and I got the one down by the dipping vat where the cattle pens are. That was the end of it down there on the south side of the road. So when we sold that, why, we had a big rise on the river about that time, and washed out nearly all the fence on mine part there, you know, on the south side. And we just decided to sell it since my brothers had done sold theirs. So my sister and I sold it to people there named Turner. And they still own it, I think. That's across from where Bonnie lives.
Yeah, I know where the cattle pens are up there.
Yeah. That was the old cattle pens where everyone petted their animals.
Is that where everybody in that area came and brought their animals?
Well, see, that Franklin Ranch completely surrounded my dad's ranch. That was 10,000 acres. My dad just had 1,000 acres in there.
Okay.
But everybody used that pen. They used to drive cattle through there, like from over toward Bernie on the old Lindale Road. And they would come through there and come by our place and then go on over here toward Albert. You know, and that was one of the places they stopped a lot of times to pen them.
Pen them and rest them.
I know my grandpa said when he had cattle there earlier, they would take them to San Antonio, and where 5 Points is down there now, that's where their cattle pens were. You know, but when I was a kid and back in World War II, there was not a lot of stuff around 5 Points there. There was a cafe and a few other things, and that was it. You know.
I didn't know they took cattle from there.
Well, and they took them there, and I guess in San Antonio they've had those stockyards there forever. You know, and that was one of the places they held them. My grandfather, he was a wonderful man. I thought the world of him, and when he was real old there, I was just little, and we used to go work in the pasture a lot of times when I was just knee-high, and he always had an axe and trimming the trees and all this and that, and he taught me how to build a fire, and you know, like the Indians do, build it like a teepee, and I don't know if you ever built a fire like that. But
no, tell me how to do that. I've never done that.
You just put the sticks up there like a teepee, and that fire burns twice as fast as any other fire. You know, I mean, it makes its own draft and all. And he taught me a few things not so good, like how to throw these flint rocks in the fire and listen to them explode, but you better be standing behind a tree over here. Have you ever heard that? They do explode. Those flint rocks, they go every way. And we had a lot of fun. He was old then, and he and I used to play horseshoes in the yard and had a big time like that.
And you used real horseshoes, not these that are made up.
The real horseshoes.
That's right.
Yeah. But he liked to be doing something all the time, mainly working in the field or in the pasture.
Well, I noticed on your picture of the house you had a bunch of antlers up on there.
Yes, those were on the front porch there. My dad, he liked to hunt. He was a great hunter. My Uncle Fritz wasn't. He didn't hunt. But my dad did, and he hunted with the neighbors around there, the Becks and the Webbers and all, and they were all friends. A lot of them hunted together.
Was deer meat your main source?
If you could find them, yeah. They were pretty scarce here in those days. Yeah. My dad said sometime, you know, I mean, he hunted mainly off the horse and a dog, and you may have to travel a day or two before you ever hit a track. You know, so they weren't plentiful.
I would have thought deer would have been pretty plentiful there.
They weren't in those days.
They weren't?
No, they were hard to come by. And he helped the guy on the ranch there that had Franklin Ranch. Those were some people from England that had that Franklin Ranch. And those neighbors I was telling you about, he ran that ranch. They had steers there in those days. And they had them all on both sides of the river there. And my dad helped him with that some too. The neighbors helped each other in those days. And that was the lady that lived there, the Hyatts. She was the one that came to my mother that night when I was born. And
so you were born in that house?
That house.
Oh, okay.
And
she
had to walk down through the field, like I say, through the 50 or 60 acres to get to our place. Well, we had a trail there where we went back and forth because we were friends. and she was there and with my mother, and her name was Clyde Hyatt, and so my mother named me Louis Clyde Kuebel.
Oh.
And we had named our son Michael Clyde Kuebel. He was deceased, but he was a paralyzed Vietnam veteran. But we named him Michael Clyde Kuebel because of her.
We haven't got to how you got married yet.
Huh?
So how did you find the woman you married?
Well, found her at this place right here, Lookenbach. They had a dance hall there we made pretty often, and she was playing the piano there. Her uncle had a band there named the Hill Country Boys, and I met her there, and I don't know, it was not too long till we were married, and they lived at Kansas City. That was right on the railroad in those days, and I saw her at a number of different dances where she played, played music, and she still does that. She still comes over here sometimes and plays over in Bernie, Maine, Fredericksburg. But she was a fine gal, and I thought she was just the best in the West. So we got married, and then, like I say, we lived in San Antonio 1 year, and I worked down there doing carpenter work, and then we came back up to Bernie and rented a place, and about that time my brother from Fredericksburg, he had a cabinet shop up there then, but he came back over to Bernie, and then we worked some together there, and he was the one that was the sheriff then. And we did carpenter work mainly from then on. Till these last 30 years or so, we did bees. Mainly bees.
I know you were into bees.
And then we had all our bees down on the Frio and the Nueces for the good Wahia honey. And my brother had bees too, but he had his bees up at Atlanta, in that area.
Now, you named a kind of honey.
Wahia. Yeah,
okay.
That's the best.
What kind is that?
It's a real light honey, and it only grows along the Frio River and the Nueces River, like from Corpus to Del Rio out that way. And you got to get where those trees grow. And
do they bloom?
Yeah, they bloom in the spring, a white puffball, kind of like you see along the river here, but we don't have them here. They're farther down. They start down about Moore or somewhere in that area from there on down. But it's really a good honey.
Well, I know you had some. You gave me some one time, and it was sure
It was so good. We still got people coming wanting honey, but that's been 4 years since we closed up. So all our bees died from the mites, which killed all our bees down in South Texas. That wiped us out. That put me in the poorhouse then. So.
Well, I don't think you're poor. I think you're pretty wealthy.
I'm rich. I don't have any money, but I mean, I'm still rich.
Yes, you are. You're very rich. Well, I'm going to get back to something you told me about being here in Blanco and the Lindendale area. You told me about some arrowheads one time.
Well, one of my brothers, Reuben, he loved to hunt arrowheads. So did my brother, the one that was sheriff. They hunted arrowheads all over, and there's many places here you can find arrowheads along the river, And they were on our place up there on both sides of the river, and I used to hunt them with them sometimes. What we'd do is go in the field when they plowed a field, and as soon as they plowed it, and if it came a rain, then the arrowheads would be left on top, And we'd go like where Max Haas's places there now used to be. And my cousin, they bought that cross there then, and in their field you could find them near any field if you looked for them, or you could dig for them, but we never did dig for them. We just walked and looked for them, and they were out there.
They were plentiful, weren't they?
Well, they were. I mean, there was many Indians here at one time, and my grandpa, when I was real little, he always made me a bow and arrow, out of dogwood, which we had along the creek, and taught me how to shoot the bow and arrow, That was great because I like to do that.
Did you ever kill anything with an arrow?
Birds, just birds.
Well, that's pretty good.
But I know my brothers later, they had some real good bow and arrows that they had bought or made or whatever, but people now kill the animals with them, so. But I can do a lot better if I had a .22 than to try that bow and arrow business, No, it is all fun, and like I say, we had a wonderful life here, and Blanco is a wonderful little place. So of course we weren't from Blanco, we were up in Kendall County, but we came to Blanco when I was little, about once or twice, maybe about 3 times a month. And that's what we had to have. They had a green grocer there, an old man named Boo Comfort, and he just had one leg. And he ran that, and then they had the old saloon there named Welcome In. That was back in those days when I was really little. I'd stand there with my dad and listen to him talk to these friends, all that he knew, you know. There was a little gal named West, and she worked there in that green grocery, and I'd sometimes talk to her. Her name was Hazel West.
Hazel West.
Okay. She married the veterinarian here later. I went to school with her that one year when I was down here in 41. And
her name is Price now?
Huh? Price, yeah.
Price,
She married Charlie Fulcher Price, yeah. And I went with her there for a while. And
wait till I see her again. I'm going to tell her.
You ask her about it. In fact, if you say, I don't know if she even remembered, but I thought she was really a fine gal. And my brother had a lot of these little arrowheads, real intricate things. And so I begged one off of my brother, Reuben. It was about so long, and it was real beautiful. And I went to Fredericksburg to a jeweler up there and had it made on a golden chain, and gave that to her. And I don't know if she still got it or might have it or whatever, but she liked it. So, but then I got away from there, and like I say, I met another gal named Janabelle. So that ended that. But that was before we went to the war, you know.
Well, that's interesting. You were a lady fan too, huh?
Well, there's, you know,
I didn't know that about you.
Well, I liked the girls. I mean, I guess most boys do. But when I went to school here in Blanco, I met a lot of people. You know what I mean? And Hazel used to ride the bus up the river there when we did go on a bus, but they didn't have a bus going up to where we lived, so I was farmed out down here. They put me down here in town with a man named Edgar Koch. He had a service station here, and he sold Ford cars, you know. He was a friend of my dad and mother, and so I stayed with them down here during the week. And I never did stay there much because nearly every day at school I'd meet somebody else there, and I'd go home with them that night, and you know, whichever way they went, whether they went down south or west or north or whatever. And I just met a lot of people in school.
The one thing I want to know is, what was the change when you came from Lindendale School to Blanco School?
Well, what messed me up was that teacher I had, that second one there. She moved me up 2 grades and moved me to Blanco. And that messed me up to no end. I didn't know, and I took algebra that first year, and I didn't even know what algebra was, because I didn't have the background. I'd missed two years. I don't know why she did that, but she did it, and so that brought me to Blanco. See, I couldn't go up there no more. And I failed algebra, so I'm English and so forth and all that I did okay, but I failed that one, and so that was one thing that disgusted me. That's one reason I left.
It's interesting that you've done so many things in your life. Is there any one thing that stands out besides the war to you?
Well, I don't know. I just I enjoy living in this world because it's so good. I can tell you one thing that helped me on my tour of the country or wherever I went was my mother. She wanted me to read the Bible, and I read the Bible before I left home completely. And because the lady I first had for a teacher, she really drilled it into you what you needed to do, and I could read well. And if I hadn't have read the Bible, I think I'd have got sidetracked on the way. Like when I was working in Chicago, that's a pretty rough town up there. And I know I went there, and I was down on the docks there looking for a job, and I asked one of those people that worked on the docks there if I could get a job here, and because he was a union man, and he said, "Yeah, if you're from Texas, we'll hire you." if you can use a gun. And I thought about that a while, and I just decided I didn't want that kind of a job, you know what I mean?
What was the gun for?
Well, that was a pretty tough town in those days.
Oh.
You should see that Chicago on the docks there. But after that, I gave that up and joined the Ringling Brothers, Barnum and Bailey. I liked that.
What was
That was
like?
wonderful. It was good. It was fun. It was tough, but I liked it. We did all kinds of work. A lot of times I worked not in the kitchen, but serving to all the people that worked in the circus. And I remember one guy, and they had a band, you know, even down there. And one of the guys was from New Braunfels. And since I was from Texas, everybody knows if you're from Texas, and they meet you or you meet them, and it was just interesting, the people that you know. But I like people that I can meet from Texas because we're a different breed of people. And no matter where you go, they can kind of tell if you're from Texas, you know. But again, like I say, I don't like to work up in the north. I don't like the cold. And this hill country here is the best place in the whole world. I was telling my wife and daughter today that my kinfolks, we came down here to Spring Branch today to look at their old graves right there on the river. And my great-grandfather, his wife are there, and one of their sons, he died back in World War I. And they're still buried right down the edge of the river there. But the old-timers came over from Germany, and they picked the best place in the world here to have a home, you know, in the hills. Because one of them stayed down on the Spring Branch there, and there's still the Kuebels down there yet. But the old man and wife had two boys. One of them was Uncle Edwards, who stayed there, and my grandfather's name was Emil. And the grandfather, he came up here and helped my grandfather buy the ranch up the river here. 1,300 acres they bought, and it was surrounded, like I say, by the Franklin Ranch. But then that's what we had from then on. And they lost some of it when one of the daughters got married and somehow lost the land. You know what I mean? But they kept 1,000 acres till the end there. That part where your kinfolks cut the wood there.
Oh yeah.
You know, and that was our little pasture, what we called the horse pasture there, where we kept the horses and the milk cows. Because when I was 6 years old, my dad said, "Well, now you're gonna have to go out in the morning and get the horses and the cows." And said, "Just listen for them, and you can hear they got a bell on." Of course, that was in the dark yet. We did that before daylight. And I said, "I'm going to have a lantern or something, and I can't go out there in the dark like that." And my grandpa said, "Well, I'll go with you a couple of mornings, and you'll be able to see. You'll be able to see like an Indian." And so he helped me a couple of days, and then I could go out there and get them myself. You know.
In the dark.
In the dark, yeah. It didn't bother me after
No
I
light, nothing.
because you don't need a light. It doesn't help you none. You can see good out there, even if there's no moon. You know, I mean, there's a lot of starlight there. But he lived back there when the Indians were around, and so.
Do you remember any stories he told you about Indians or anything?
No, but he always had to build me those bow and arrows, you know. And but I'm sure he knew some tales about it because he knew where the old trails were around here, like where the buffalo used to come through right on our place there, come across the river down there by the bluff. And they had a buffalo wallah on this side of the river, up on our side. And he told me about those things.
Well, I'm going back to your house now. You told me that there was a rock that you chipped out of the Blanco River and brought up to the house. What was that rock about? Okay,
down there, it was a flat rock about what we chipped out was about this big by maybe a foot less than this is in length. And when I sold my part down there, I asked my brother-in-law, Zygmunt, the boy's dad, married my sister, would you go down there with me and help me get this rock? Because my dad, in 1908, it was December, I believe December 19th, he'd written that in that rock, the date and his name, E.M. Kuebel. And I wanted that, so we went down there and chipped it out of that big rock. That's where our swimming hole was there, and it was a rock it was about as big as this room here, and we dug that out of there, you know, about that deep, and cut it out with some crowbars, and got it there. And then my dad had an old farm all beat tractor at that time, and we pulled it up across the road there and put it on our land on this side, on the other side of the river. And now my daughter, when we worked on her house here about 30 years ago, we brought it up there and put it in the fireplace, so it's right there on one side of the fireplace. And it's just a big stone with his name on it.
He just wanted to do that, huh?
Yeah, well, my daughter, she wanted it in there too.
Oh, okay.
Because we had it laying down there in the lot where she's living up there now, you know, and it was just laying there on the ground, and so it was good that we were going to build a big fireplace in there anyway, and it worked out real good to have it on one side.
Good reminder of your dad.
Yeah. We really loved my dad and my mother, but my dad was so good to us, and
well,
we just had a good life.
Tell me about your mother a little bit. I haven't heard anything about her.
My mother was a fine person. She was had a lot of relatives around here. We had aunts and uncles in every town around here, Fredericksburg and Doss and Johnson City. I had an aunt and uncle, every one, because she had a whole bunch of sisters. And she had one brother that lived out in West Texas around Cristobal. His name was Louis Dunheim, and so that's what my mother named me after. Louis Clyde, and that middle name after that lady over there around the mountain, her mother. Anyway, and then I had Hans Baking over at Johnson City, was one of my Uncle Hans and can't even remember, Aunt Carrie Becking. Her name was Becking. He worked there in the courthouse forever nearly. And then I had an aunt and uncle up at Doss. Their name was Lloyd Becker. That was a half sister. And then we had one in Austin. Her name was Aunt Elsie. And then we had one in New Braunfels. Well, he used to live up the river there at the Flugart store. He was one of the Flugarts. They had a house right there where a gin was. That was Uncle Albert.
Now, you're the first one I've interviewed that ever talked about the Flugarts.
Okay, well, that was my aunt and uncle, my mother's sister, and you remember Gus Flugart?
Yeah.
Okay, he had the store and the gin, and so him and his brother were half owners in the gin, because that's where we used to bring the cotton down there in the wagon and go to the gin there. That was way back there. But I used to help the Webbers pick cotton sometime when I was just a kid there, because they had all those big fields below the road, below the house there.
That was hard work, I bet.
Well, it wasn't hard work. We were just kids. We just played more than we picked cotton. But my mother picked cotton too, because like she said, when I was little, she'd put me on a cotton sack and she'd pull along there and fill it up, and I'd go to work with her there, you know. That's what people used to do.
Take their kids with them to work, huh?
Yeah. But people lived different in those days. They all worked, you know. When you got 1,000 acres of land and 250 acres of farm, somebody's got to work.
That's true.
You know.
That's very true.
But my dad did sometime. He had other people to share crop, because you can't do it all with horses and mules, you know, and do it yourself.
Now, how did he share crop? I mean,
well, there were some people down here in town here named Ludwig, and they had some boys that needed a job, and like they'd go up there and do the plowing or whatever, you know, and it helped both ways there, you know, because they needed some money to have food. And
okay, so they do most of the work, and then you get
part of the he had to furnish them the stuff to do it with, like the mules and the equipment. You had to have a different piece of equipment for everything you were raising. He raised lots of corn and lots of things like that, and that was a pretty labor intensive to do that corn, because all I remember about it, we had lots of good roasting ears to eat, and all the neighbors would come and get roasting ears when that time came around, and then the women would get together and can that corn, you know, in quart jars and put it up for the winter time, you know. Everything went in a fruit jar.
So you didn't buy a lot of things from the grocery stores?
Well, you had to buy those jars and the lids and so forth, but you bought most of your food right out of the pasture there, you know. I mean, you either raised it or you didn't have it.
Did you ever help with butchering animals?
Oh yeah, we always did a lot of butchering. There was a guy named Watney here in Blanco. He used to come out and butcher our. We always had calves that you called milk calves. And he would come out and butcher one under a tree up there. You know, you'd get it under the tree where you were going to pull it up after a while, but first you'd shoot the animal and lay there and skin it on its back, you know, and pull it up in the tree and finish skinning it and cut it up, and then you'd bring the meat down here to town and cut it up, you know, in small pieces and put it in the butcher shop. Of course, we'd always leave us some meat too, because you know, so you had meat. And then we had a butcher club sometime where you'd either butcher a mutton or a calf or something amongst several neighbors, like the Deckerts up there would have it, and some of the other kinfolks, and just people that we knew. Everybody would butcher something like once a week because you didn't have an ice box. That worked good.
Did you have a smokehouse?
Oh yeah, we had a smokehouse where you made sausage and they put up their own ham and bacon and all.
I know I used to watch my grandfather kill pigs and make sausage and stuff.
Oh, yeah.
Did you make any of the German type stuff? Like
we didn't make, now like my aunt and uncle from over to Albert there, Uncle Henry and Wilkie, they made blood sausage, but my family never made blood sausage.
They didn't.
But when we would help somebody else do it, I mean, it was fine. But at our house, we never, when you stuck a hog, we didn't save the blood. But some of them did. But we never did make the blood sausage. And I still wouldn't eat it now, to my, not that it would hurt me any, but our family didn't do it.
Yeah. Did you eat the cracklings?
Yeah, we always had cracklings, but we mainly used those for trap bait. You know, when we were running trap line. That was another thing my dad gave me to do when I started school. You're going to run a trap line down here in the pasture, and you can make a few dollars that way, or what we made was nickels, not dollars. But there was a man up at one of the Engels, at the Engels store up at Lookenbach. He'd come around once in a while and bought furs, and I know you'd get like a nickel for a possum, you know. And
what else did you trap?
For trap bait?
Well, what did you trap?
Well, we trapped anything that was out there, mainly the little varmints like the possums and the skunks and the raccoons and the ringtails. But mainly ringtails we hunted at night with a light, because their eyes shine so bright. They're easy to find at night. And we caught those in traps too. And a lot of foxes.
A lot of people tell me they ran dogs.
My dad had dogs all the time. He even caught a mountain lion up there, way back there. That was before my time though. But one of the Beck boys up there, one of the neighbors, they were out hunting, and they didn't have a gun or nothing along. But dogs would tree this animal, but every time they'd get up there close, it would jump out, and the dogs couldn't handle it. So they finally, one of them went home and got some kind of gun and brought back, and they shot it. Did you ever put that sausage down in the lard? That's the way you kept your sausage during the off times. You know, I mean, you just put it like in a stone crock and poured lard over the sausage. You know,
I can't remember doing that. Most of the time they were dried.
Okay, they were dried, but you could put them in there and keep them from now on. You know, at least for a year. You know.
Okay.
They were real good like that.
Well, that's something to know, because all I remember them doing was taking the skins and stuff and making cracklings and boiling some of the fat for soap, lye soap. Did you use that?
Yeah, my mother always made the lye soap in the big black pot. You did everything with that. You could make what we call cooked sausage. You know, that would be something similar to the blood sausage, but it was altogether different. You could cut it up in pieces like, you know, and people like that. I never did eat it. I didn't like it, but a lot of people did. It's whatever you like. And it was something to learn, you know.
Well, I got another question. What happened that was the most important event in your life?
Well, I would have to say when my dad died, that was the most thing I would remember, because I thought the world and all of him, and when he passed away, it just really hurt me, you know. And I realized how back through those years, I could have spent a lot more time at home doing things for them that when I went in service and all, I could have stayed there and helped them, but I mean, I just didn't, and it's too late to worry about it then, after it's done all over.
But there wasn't anything at that point you could do but be a good man.
Well, it just, I could have stayed there and helped him on the farm and ranch, you know what I mean? He died pretty young. He was 68 when he died, and you just miss someone when they're so good to you, and he never did try to tell me that anything that I had to do this or that. I mean, I had a few little odds and ends of things I learned to do, like trapping or working the animals or plowing or whatever. But I mean, he was just a good person.
Right.
You know, he didn't drink and he didn't carouse or nothing like that. And we used to go sometimes over to the south over there and go to those rodeos. You know where there was pens are over there by that cemetery where all of the people from in that area are buried there?
Oh, yeah.
Or Lee is buried?
Yeah.
Okay. See, a little farther down there is where the rodeo grounds were.
Oh, there was a rodeo up there too.
Yeah,
See, I didn't
we used to
really-
go to that. We used to
Yeah,
go to
I
that.
didn't know that.
Turns
Well, I
red.
want to get that last picture in right quick that your sister did of the old courthouse in Blanco.
Yeah.
I really want to get that in so we can.
Well, if you look in that book, it's on the top
It's
it's on the
Blanco County
Yeah.
Heritage Book. When did she do that?
well, that was while they were living up there in the area there, because she did a lot of paintings when they lived there, because she had a lot of them here in the bowling alley per se. She did a lot of those with a little hen with the chickens, baby chickens. And, well, she sold all kinds of pictures there.
Okay.
And she did a lot of wildlife, because there was a lot of deer and turkeys that come to the house. You know, if you look at that book right there, if you can find it,
It's right up there, Gene, up on the very top, that Blanco County Heritage.
that one right there.
Right by your hand.
You're
up.
right.
That black one, that big black one.
This one?
Yeah,
Yes, sir.
that's the book it's in, right there. Yeah.
That was the one my sister did that out of.
This was made the cover.
Yeah.
That's very nice. Good memory.
Beautiful.